Well, thanks everybody for coming. I'm excited to read from this. So, The Allure of Elsewhere came out in May, and it is about a solo camping trip I took from Minnesota to Nova Scotia to do some research on my dad's family, who was among the first French Acadians to Nova Scotia in the 1620s. So if you know anything about the Cajuns in Louisiana, they used to be the Acadians in Nova Scotia before the British kicked them out. So it's kind of a wild history. But part of the story that my family worked to create by itself was by camping. So I'm going to read a little from the beginning, a little from the middle, a little from the end, and I think I've got it to about 15 minutes. I'm in the back seat of a black diesel Blazer with my two younger sisters. Dad is driving, Mom is navigating. It's July 1987, and we're driving through the Mojave Desert to San Diego to visit Dad's family, the California Babines, and it's our first major travel together as a family, and we're learning the peculiarities and practicalities of what this kind of movement means. I'm 8, Christy is 6, Kim is 4. We don't have air conditioning because Dad had just had the engine rebuilt, and since it was still getting broken in, he's worried about the Blazer overheating, and in the middle of the Mojave Desert, in temperatures past 100 degrees, probably closer to 110, so we try to make do with the windows rolled down. From an 8-year-old view, there is nothing to see. The world empty and spreading out beyond sight to a place where you're not sure if it's mirage or real. It is intensely miserable. The kind of misery that melts animosity between small girls who would prefer not to be sitting so close to each other. Little legs imprinted with the rough cloth of the back seat, sticky skin scorched by metal seatbelts that still somehow emotionally mark the 1980s on my skin. Bickering over which of the three of us would get to use the 2 red tape players, who had to sit in the middle seat, and she's touching me. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. We like telling stories of how my sisters and I made up our own games on trips like these. There was a standard license plate game, which was always a little more fun when we hit national parks or stared down Air Force bases, which is where we usually found Alaska and Hawaii. Once we got all 50 states, our reward was ice cream. I suspect we would have gotten ice cream anyway. Over the years, my sisters and I invented the quote game, which mostly consisted of somebody picking a movie like The Princess Bride, and the first one not to be able to come up with a quote lost. Have fun storming the castle. Anybody want a peanut? As you wish. The first ones were easy, but once you got the easy ones out of the way, the quotes got more obscure and the game got harder. I'm going to skip a little here. They were an exotic dream, this family of California Babines, the way people become in your imagination. We rarely got to see them, but we knew where they lived because California was special. We saw it on television and in movies all the time. They lived just north of San Francisco, land of cable cars, sourdough, and Alcatraz. They drove the Golden Gate Bridge, ate See's candy and Ghirardelli chocolate. I grew up in small-town Minnesota, where our biggest claim to fame in Nevis was as the home of the world's largest tiger muskie, and when people came to visit us, we took them 20 miles away to see the headwaters of the Mississippi River. We ate lefse and venison and wild rice. Everything that was important in the world was elsewhere, not here. California and the East Coast was where a person went when they grew up and gained reason. The allure of elsewhere. It was a concept I knew before I had words for it. When I went to stores, we could find giant framed photographs of New York or Paris or San Francisco, never the Minneapolis skyline or the Stone Arch Bridge. The stories I read were never set in Minnesota, and I wouldn't learn until college that the first American to win the Nobel Prize in Literature was a Minnesotan. So there's your literary trivia for today. High culture happened in New York, or Los Angeles, or Seattle, or New Orleans, not St. Paul, elsewhere. When Starbucks started its You Are Here mug series, I was irrationally excited to see the Twin Cities represented, but unless you specifically went to a local gift shop, you weren't going to find I Heart Minneapolis or Grey Duck t-shirts. The place I grew up in was a butt of jokes, full of unsophisticated people and bland food, with a football team whose blowing of a field goal in 1999 in the NFC Championship still causes Minnesotans acute pain. We haven't won a World Series since 1991, though the Twins did win the World Series in '87 on my birthday. We had to laugh at ourselves. Everybody else did. Once I applied for a job on the East Coast, and they asked me in the interview if I'd ever lived in a city before, and I was living in Minneapolis. California, and the West in general, was important. Everything I read told me so, even as I died of dysentery nearly every time I played the Oregon Trail. So I hooked up my tiny little 13-foot Scamp camper, I tossed my unenthusiastic cats into it, and away we went. So this is the first major day. Maybe I should have suspected that the drive from Thunder Bay to Sault Ste. Marie wouldn't go as planned when the morning started out with a moose on the side of the road, just standing there, like a discarded early draft of an idea for an animal, as the essayist Paul Gruco once described them. Can't remember if I've ever seen a moose in the wild before. I don't think I have, and it's really easy to forget how enormous they are until the next time I watch the opening credits of Northern Exposure. I wish I could have gotten a picture of it, just standing there peacefully in the ditch, watching the world and a weirdly shaped camper go by, but that doesn't happen when you're at speed and you're well past the moose before you realize you're not hallucinating. I'm not hallucinating, that was a moose. The cats are not impressed, and this strikes me as one of the principal irritations of traveling and camping alone, the collective shared exclamation of, "Did you see that?" And there's literally nobody to share it with. I won't say that the moose was as cliched a moment as "we're not in Minnesota anymore, Maeve," but it was close. I left Kakabeka Falls about 7:45 a.m., and my main goal was to keep an eye on the gas tank en route to Sault Ste. Marie, which would take me about 8 hours. This was the plan. And I had planned it very carefully, because having a plan is the principal way I manage being on the road alone. Everything is managed down to the smallest detail with color-coded Post-it notes. There isn't a whole lot of sightseeing or good reasons to stop between Thunder Bay and Sault Ste. Marie, so I decided to push through. It would be a long, ugly day of driving, but there were no good alternatives. So I ate my oatmeal, filled my big green Stanley thermos with very strong Earl Grey, put the cats in their kennels, broke camp, and headed out. Maeve vomited before we got to the gates of the park, as per usual, so at least I had a handy trash can ready. Death, taxes, Maeve. Galway stared judgmentally from his kennel on the front seat. We were off to a good start. The status of the gas tank was a priority. Yesterday I went in search of gas and could not get either my credit or my debit card to work, and my anxiety increased to the point where I thought I could feel electricity in the ends of my hair. Later, I would realize that the fear of fizzing in my blood was not one of actual physical danger, but a much more psychologically gendered fear. I'm not afraid on the road in a physical way, but I'm fighting a fear of failure, a fear of looking like an idiot, a fear of running out of the gas on the side of the road and facing the snark often aimed at women drivers. It's as potent a fear as any other. I fear problems and conundrums I can't think my way out of, because as a solo person, if I can't do it, it doesn't get done. I'd rather drive well-traveled roads to get where I'm going than scenic route, because to be truly alone with no way to access help is my greatest fear. I went to a different gas station and the card reader still didn't like my card, and so with increasing desperation and with the stress starting to create the tunnel vision I recognized, I went inside. I was running out of gas and I only had American dollars. It must have shown on my face. "No problem," the cashier said, "just pump your gas and we'll call it the bank if we need to." The adrenaline rush of relief made my fingers tingle. "Okay," I said, "thank you." I filled the tank and put some 50 liters in, $80 worth, and inside the store the cashier ran my card and it worked fine. Maybe it helped that the cashier was female, that the panic of the morning's hunt for gas had been so easily solved, but the answer to the problem was that Canada had switched to chip cards, which would not be common in the States for another year or two. It was a moment of relief so intense that I could feel tears building in my chest. I resolved never to let this happen again. From the back seat, Maeve snarked that this was twice in the last couple of days that I had lost my mind over gas, first in Two Harbors and then again today. And I said her commentary was unnecessary. About 1 o'clock, I'm in Wawa, which is about halfway to Sault Ste. Marie, and the sign says that the 17 is closed south of Wawa for emergency repairs. There are sinkholes in the road. There's a detour, so instead of 3 hours left in my day, I'm looking at least 4.5. On an old logging road, the nice young lady at the visitor center tells me, but I don't really know what that means. It's uncomfortable, but what's the alternative? I'd already seen some spectacular scenery, granite and gorges, and the kind of impact I'd forgotten landscapes could have. I'd been living on the Great Plains in Nebraska and on the Red River Valley of Minnesota, North Dakota for the last several years, and I'd learned to appreciate the scope of that particular landscape, so it's necessary to have my senses recalibrated. The sun is bright, the sky is blue, I have snacks and tea and water and a porta potty, and other than the basic inconvenience of it all, there is no reason to get overly upset about a detour. We don't tell stories about the things that went well, after all. I'm on a road trip, an adventure. This is all a part of what comes with putting wheels to the road, even if I had a plan. The moose should have been a sign. What I learned on this day driving the detour from Thunder Bay is that old logging road means narrow, winding, and at turns straight up terrifying as I try to match the speed I feel safest pulling a camper against the giant trucks tucked up against the scamps' butt who want to go faster. Under normal circumstances, I pull off on the side of the road to let them pass because I've been taught the etiquette of the road from a young age. The road has no shoulders, no margin for error, not even inches. When the scamp, the cats, and I get to the tiny town of Chapleau, I pass it thinking I'm okay on gas, but then a very small sign tells me that there would be no gas for 120 kilometers, so I turn around, make a U-turn in the middle of the road with a camper, which I'm very proud of, and I go back and fill up the tank. This turns out to be a very good idea. There is no way I would have made it to Thessalon without a full tank of gas, and I relearned this important lesson of the road. Never let the gas tank go below a third. This is usually advice I follow in the winter, not the summer. I'm fairly sure that the rivers, the trees, the wildflowers, the steepness of hillsides painted in dappled sun are beautiful, but I don't really notice as I white-knuckle the steering wheel, tunnel vision tight around my ears. I'm pretty sure that what I'm not looking at hasn't changed in several 100,000 years, like there's the planet's fingerprints right in front of me, but now's not a good time to look or think about much of anything that's not straight up my windshield or in my rear view. And intellectually, I know why. On one of our early family trips, we rented our friend's pop-up and took it to Winnipeg, where the camper came off the Blazer's hitch in the middle of Winnipeg traffic. And even though I know intellectually that my dad had the wrong size ball for the hitch, it's a sense memory I can't shake when I'm pulling the scamp, even though I know the hitch ball is the right size, that it's locked down tight, and there's no way it's coming loose. I know this. And Dad taught me from the beginning to always cross the safety chains, though at the time he swears he told me is to catch the hitch if it comes off. And Winnipeg was 20 years ago, and this should not be a thing that is lodged in my belly, but I'm carrying this fear nonetheless. Right there, sharp under my ribs. I don't even remember the event itself, so how do we carry things we don't remember? He says later, well, I hope when you remember it, you just remember that I never lost my cool, and I got to buy a new crescent wrench to fix it. I don't actually remember it at all. I say, I remember the experience of it, not the event. My body remembers it, but my mind doesn't. I've learned the lesson of Winnipeg, but on this particular road, I don't know if the lesson will hold. I'm just going to read a little bit from the last night. And apologies to anybody who speaks French, because that is not one of my skills here. Say it in French, Acadie. I repeat the unfamiliar pronunciation, Acadie, putting the emphasis in different places than the English Acadia I'd been using. I learned to say it right over a tasting of l'Acadie Blanc, sunshine gold, crisp in contrast to the roundness of French vowels at the Domaine du Grand Pré winery. Later, I listened to Beausoleil's In Search of Acadia, and Acadie is the only French word I recognize as Michael Doucet pulls something true and raw from his fiddle, the minor key, clear and keening. Later that afternoon, I stand on the dikes the Acadians built in the 17th century. I learned that Beausoleil takes its name from Joseph Bressard de Beausoleil, a name not far from Babin on the memorial to families deported in Grand Pré. Beausoleil, beautiful sun in a minor key. When I left for Nova Scotia, I knew some of these places, these locations of family sorrow, but I didn't know how far I needed to travel to find out where it all started, if such a point was to be found. Standing here alone on the Bay of Fundy turns into a moment where I can watch the timelines of history slide against each other, muddled in what is ancestral family history, contemporary family history, and my history that I will create on my own. The beautiful sun in a minor key, elusive behind a storm system that has drenched Nova Scotia for the past 3 days, has finally returned, and it brings with it the kind of glorious joy that can only come after suffering days of bad weather while camping. My campsite is only 100 yards from the Bay of Fundy and those magnificent tides, that red water that never changes color, no matter the influence of the sky. In moments when I sat inside my camper at my tiny dinette table with a pot of tea, watching the rain out the front window, I wonder about the land moving here under my feet in Acadie that I cannot feel, about the geologic harmonic resonance created by the tides in this place that I cannot hear. There are places on the planet that hold more gravity, and I did not expect the Bay of Fundy to become one of them. And this will become part of the stories I will tell about this trip, about this place, and how this story only belongs to me. This place, this moment, it isn't a part of a collective identity. It is mine, and it is only mine. I'm starting to understand that there's something about Acadie, this water, these forests primeval, that I'm never going to be able to escape, and that doesn't seem problematic. It's been 4 generations since bay vines have stood in this place, and it feels important that the place doesn't let me go easily. On my last night in Grand Pre, when the rain has cleared to a setting sun so pure that it creates sundogs, I walk the tidal flats looking for rocks. My kindred spirit of a niece has recently taken to collecting rocks, much to the consternation of my sister, who wonders, well, where they'll put them all. And I've already saved for her Thunder Bay amethyst and a perfectly shaped egg of white quartz from Yarmouth. Now, on the tidal flats in Grand Pre, in hours I am not yet willing to leave, I collect petrified wood from what litters the beach, relics of the forest's primeval, the grain of wood so clear I can see growth rings in the stone, time held in my palm in a way that I can count, measure in a tangible form, a history I can physically understand. But the history in the stone in my hand is a dead thing, and it is vaguely wrong. 2 young men in their mid-20s come down the steps to the beach, and I stay long enough to watch them catch the echo of twilight in their kites. This is the best $25 I've ever spent, I hear one of them say. And I think I can hear the melody of a bow in the wind being drawn across the strings in their hands. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for that wonderful reading. We do have I forgot to mention, we have a book table over here as well. These are, if you want to get Karen Babines and Andrew Nauberg's books, please go over to the UTC table. We have some other books from our other readers. Our other readers this week, and including our next reader, Andrea Yoryabek. If you want to get her poetry collection, it's over here. And it's got a cool silver medal winner on that. So that tells you that it must be good. And anyway, I'm so excited to have Andrea here. We've been in touch, trying to get her to Meacham and figure out when we can do it. And I'm so glad she could make it this time. And also, she is our first. We're doing it, as many of you know, we've had a partnership with Stoveworks for several years now, and we try to have our Friday night reading there, which is an art space. I recommend all of you try to go there. It's a little bit more of a fun, artsy event off campus, and I recommend you all go to that event. But this year, with Stoveworks, they're like, well, why don't we have, if you can, a visiting writer stay, because our Stoveworks has residencies. And so we have our first residency there, and she is staying at Stoveworks over the weekend, which is super cool, which is why I was glad that Andrea was doing it, because she is also a visual artist. She's a painter, as well as a multi-genre author. So she's just a great fit for there. So I'm so glad she can make it. She's the author of In Another Country, Small Crimes, and Night Call. Her translations from Croatian include several poetry collections, and that was what got shortlisted for the National Translation Award, and her website's on here. Her website's super cool, so I recommend you go to that. And if you want to get her book, it is over there as well. So welcome, Andrea. Andrea, you're back.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for this really lovely introduction. I'm going to start with a couple of translations. I love translating, and one of the things that I love best about it, it gets me out of my head efficiently. So I will only read one poem from this book, Dead Letter Office. And it's always a difficult thing for me to decide which one. But here it is, inspired by Karen's reading, Magellan Home Alone. I'm short, so I'm going to stand here. Is that okay? I feel hidden there. Oh, there you go. The dress. Magellan Home Alone. You woke up sweaty and naked, muscles cramped from a drinking spree that lasted too long, and sailed in the direction of the fridge, sweaty and naked, an explorer in search of a new world. It turned out the world is a watermelon, seen from afar through a silk stocking. Under its core, bloody magma, sugar cooled into envy, tosses seeds in its sweet love. And inside each seed, like in a town hall, a dead man keeps court with his habit of silence, his test of stillness, until a knife floods rooms with the syrup of warm spring nights, and clerks, abandoned by everyone, run before the first drops under the roof of a provincial post office. From there, the hoity and dry watch pigs swallow the world, and the storm rinses out its map. They ask, how does so much rain fit into the sky above such a small town? Since I have translated this poem, every time it gets stormy out, I'm always like, how does so much rain fit over such a small town? It stayed with me. I'm going to read, I just a month ago finished translating another collection by this same poet, and this is a really cool collection of prose poems that asks the question as to what happens to festivals and holidays of places that no longer exist. So he said all of these poems, they kind of read like they're linked. All of them take place on this imaginary heath where animals and people appear and disappear. Occasionally these people are celebrities and poets. It's a bit of an homage to the Central European avant-garde giants in general. And in them, the language itself becomes a kind of festivity. So I just wanted to read one of those. It's a little strange, but I think I can get away with it. I'm just like, she's not from here, so that's okay. Second Coming. I didn't care. The blood did whatever it wanted. Across the heath, rabid dogs spread words, visible and invisible, like subterranean rivers. They'd tear the word home into pieces. They'd leave the word fruit to dry in the sun. They would banish the word stamp, then immediately build a monument to it and to the words man, skin, and growl. I didn't care. I forgot how things lined up. I forgot how to lie. The dogs were truly rabid. They carried cities in their maws, rot on their teeth, calendar squares in their hearts. And I, cut open like a lip, carried a jug bigger than my conscience to the water. There was nothing to do but wait. The golden rule applied to the heathland. Whatever the dogs brought was immediately put into the Constitution. A sack of lust and bones, the wrong wolf. Just as well I didn't care, because while I spent nights squatting by the spring, waiting for the Annunciation and excess, someone's special sin, I also forgot to wait. And I surrendered to predatory love. The jug remained whole, the throats deep, bitter. The blood did whatever it wanted. The blood returned. It's actually a little bit funnier than it sounds. It's kind of just on the surface serious. This is the opening poem from In Another Country, titled Gnostic Movements. And when I wrote this poem, I had just learned the word Gnostic, which probably most people knew, but it was new to me, and I liked it so much I had to put it in something, so I put it in the title. And Nastic means like when flowers or plants open up when sun comes out, or there's light, and they go to sleep, or they close down when it gets dark. So that got me excited, so I wrote a poem. Sweetness. Back home, the Adriatic tightens around the shore like a snake around a hot rock. In each house on the island, there is a table. On every table, a loaf, round as a Slavic face. Ashes in the oven. Ashes on the domes of the bread. Ashes on the roof of one's mouth. Last year, my cousin offed himself in his home, and our family, scattered around the world, got caught in a phone web. Catching up with each other, we forgot his body. But things were funny. Phone in hand, someone picked her nose and pulled out a bloody fingernail. Another drew a tough, tar-black hair from between her teeth, a pubic curl, and wondered whose it was. Listen, in Sarajevo, the fit ones ran through the sniper alley. The rest took up dying. Longing is a trick, baby. Go inside a rock, a ringtone, the red coal of my tongue, and you will only taste yourself. Babe, keep the curtains parted. See the moon tossing her long white hair across the ocean. Hear its steady back-arcing roar. Look at the chenilled strip of black sand, that fool walking with a flashlight. Listen to the ocean, and you'll come apart like a love letter in rain. Sweetness, even dandelions lose their heads at night. The following poem is a kind of a poem that draws a lot from newspaper articles, actually. I did a lot of research for it, even though I didn't need to. I don't know, I imagine a lot of you write about your own experiences and family lineage and so on. Many of us do. And I find it interesting how memory can, sometimes we can doubt our own memory, I guess. At least I do. So this was written in memory of Srebrenica, which took place 1995 in July, when 8,000 Bosnian men and boys were killed during the war. And part of the reason why I wrote this poem was I noticed that in the news there was this resurgence of these newspaper articles and coverage about this man that the media, I think, dubbed as the bone hunter. And this was a person who's lost family members in the war, and 25 years later he was still walking the woods daily, helping to find some pieces of remains to kind of give closure to people. So I was, more than anything, I was fascinated by him and his dedication to keep the memory alive of the people he remembered. Personal effects. Decades later, the dirt is still sifted in search of folks who failed to escape the beatings, bulldozers pushing their emaciated bodies into ditches, those who couldn't flee their own neighbors, cleansing their land of outsiders, the prey. At first, the ground gave clothed skeletons, a rare pair of feet, still in socks, toes and all, then clothing, a sky blue tracksuit, dirt black, scraps of home-knit sweaters, ransacked bags, a Quran, the wind flapping its pages, perhaps a toothbrush, a medical card, a rusted Swiss knife, a photo of a man with a clear face, a shoe half sunk in dirt, ants crawling over it, a spoon, a shirt blanket, ligatures caked with mud, scraped blindfolds, all across the valley between the hillside pastures, their lime-white farmhouses, and into the woods, where as kids they used to play, where they knew every tree, the narrow path where they were hunted down. There might still be a lighter, a jaw bright with moss, a rib, a phalanx. It's difficult to find skulls these days, to stop combing the forest floor, to let go of crumbs of clay. Some say it's even harder to dig oneself out of the country, erasing itself. Another one inspired by Karen. This is a road trip piece. And then I will read one more, and that will be 15 minutes, I think, right? Okay. Black daisies. We are inside the barrel of a heat wave, this abstinent American and I. The earth, the sky, the strange Nevada sun blazing in between. A tattooed river courses up his pale forearm, and a mustached koi threads upstream, the fish rendered separate from its world. Across the table, hopeless Jack slings ice cubes down the canyon of his mouth, crushes them with a metallic tang, and says, I've been sober for over a decade, and I still can't sit still. The roof vent exhales a steamy breath. The sun glares out through the ground. I've spent my life in badly lit rooms, and the only thing this brightness reminds me of is my cousin kneeling in the wooden confessional in front of the delirious light of God pouring in through the lattice partition, and him letting out a loud, wet fart. It's sitting in light we can't do. The heat is just a bitter oleander, desert thrift, a clod of dirt you're starting to feel like, and there is nothing you can do about it but wish for a spit of rain. Though now I want a narrow vase with black daisies before me, not a lush flower bed or a shadowy bank pearled with dew, just a spray of black daisies curving like script over uncomplaining earth, or crotch hair shy curling into its own heat. Little wicks drawing fuel to the flame. I want a wet, light-absorbing language, a crawling, heat-converting argot, and I want to drink it like liquor. And the final piece. This was an elegy to a friend, poet, who passed away a couple of years ago, and I've been writing a few poems sort of in his memory. A few truths and a few lies. I love Jesus and Kenny, whoever Kenny is. I'm a genius at dressage, and my favorite food is tripe. You're taking a late night bath and sending me a pic. We plan the future. Your desk next to mine on the second floor landing. Yours is neater. We pick tyrants, the party or the church. Mississippi is blessed. Balkan is an abandoned resort with phenomenal PR. I am Lady Illyria standing before you, skirt up, and you, tongue out, kneel before me. It's how I colonize America. Days butt each other the way the calendar taught them. They push through the square frames and defenestrate. We go to a wedding at the Spanish ruins. Even the Spanish ruins in America are American. A geriatric band plays Staying Alive. The stage is made of magnolia leaves, and people dance like horses. We drive down the dark interstate of the tongue and run over a hare. The night sky rips open. A buck knife flashes its stiff blade. We go to a wedding at the ruins. A geriatric band plays Staying Alive. On the stage made of linden, Tomasz Chalamun is horsing around. The morning that's been years in the making arrives filled with sleep. They find you in a tub, in a river, underground. I love Jesus and Kenny and other stallions too. Your a bit is a skit, is horseshit. You're taking a bath, sending me a pic. I'm looking at your face. I touch my face, pater noster, etc. I'm bent over. Chalamun is doing a pirouette, his shirt ripped open. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Andrea Jurjevic. That was some stunning poetry there. So please buy her book over here. She'll be around to sign it. She will also be here for the rest of Meacham, so I hope you'll get a chance to. I really encourage you. We try to have these receptions and give some people time to meet and chat with our writers, especially our visiting writers like Andrea. So I hope that you will, if one of those poems moved or touched you, that you will go up and introduce yourself to her, because it does mean a lot to us writers that people are actually reading or listening to what we write. And last is, but not least, is Andrew Nauberg, and I guess I better get my bio. All I can say about Andrew is, I don't know if it's been the past 2 years, he has just blown up in the, I would say, I guess the horror genre, does that work? He is just everywhere, outselling everybody in Tennessee, it seems like, which is fantastic because he's such a hardworking and talented writer. It's great to see some, I guess, external success coming his way, because he's always been talented and hardworking. So we're really happy to see that for him. He's super productive and a great teacher. So please get a chance to take a class with him if you can. But Andrew also has connections with Croatia, right? And he has written poems, from what I remember, about his Croatian ancestors. So I was super excited that he was able to piggyback off of Andrea to kind of, not that it's necessarily in his reading, but just that we have that kind of Croatian lineage going on. So Andrew Nauberg is the novelist who wrote Extinction Dream, The Mobius Door, Gallatuk, The Neverborn Thief, and These Fading Stars, Try Not to Die in the Shadowlands, and 2 poetry collections. His next novel, Dead Heart Eats the Light, releases in 2026. Again, you can get a bunch of his books over at the bookstore and a few others over here. So please welcome Andrew Nauberg.
Thank you so much, Sybil, and thank you so much, Andrea, for the incredible reading, and Karen as well. You all are absolutely fabulous, and it's been a privilege to listen to you. So I am going to read from Extinction Dream. I will say, though, actually every one of my novels has in some way incorporated a major element of Croatia. This one is no different, though I won't get to those parts during this reading. Set against an eco-dystopian backdrop where geopolitical tensions between America and Russia have reached a peak, Extinction Dream tells the story of a young soldier named Marcus Cole, who is deployed to what he calls loosely orbital duty. He believes that orbital duty is going to be a cushy research gig, but when he arrives there, he discovers he's been deployed to the front line of a secret war against an alien species that attacks us telepathically using our own nightmares as weapons. And I will be reading from the first chapter, which is 1 on the screen, 2 in the mind. In front of me, a curved bank of 14 screens, 1 for each of the enemies. I do not know where the attack will come from, so my eyes dart among the monitors. I'm told they are a buffer between me and the enemy, my only actual line of personal defense before their attacks invade my mind. Each screen displays the name of an angel or demon, the font stylized like an old digital clock. The names are based, best I can tell, on the flavor of their attacks. Legion's attacks often involve distorted interpretations of how others see you. Mammon, the greedy, likes to taunt you with your deepest desires. Moloch, the violent, batters you with visions of insane brutality. Fresh launchies sometimes joke that we're up here fighting demons, but it doesn't take too long before you get tired of the rah-rah bullshit. I figure maybe the higher-ups wanted something both familiar and menacing. Make the aliens seem less alien, but still other. For the moment, it doesn't matter, though I am weightless, held into the combat seat of a swivel-based gimbal rig by clips, buckles, and cords, wired up all over with electrodes whose redundant measurements assure the systems and observers that my implants accurately report my vitals and neural acuity. I am burdened only by fatigue, the simple byproduct of a mentally draining life in orbit combined with an elevated rate of red blood cell death. I am in a combat pod attached to the defense platform just over 400 kilometers above the Earth. The pod is a 4-diameter sphere, but you'd never know its actual size because monitoring and censoring equipment is mounted to every centimeter of the walls. Beyond the tiny porthole is the 5-meter crawlspoke to the access passageway, from which extends the active phalanx of 8 combat pods. The glass in the porthole is one way, so I can only see the pod interior reflected back at me. None of the panels around me have lights, screens, or indicators, except a few embedded in my rig chair. The early models did, I'm told, but the enemy quickly learned how to manipulate our biometrics to trigger false signals. They've been figuring out how to use our own gear against us since the early days. The air system circulates steadily to keep me from sweating, but I sip from a water feed because I hate the automatic dispenser triggered by my biofeedback. It's pretty jarring when you're intensely focused and a jet of water sprays the back of your throat, and in the rig, I try my best to remain focused. I shift orientation, bracing for onslaught. It might just be me, but my organs seem to slosh inside my abdomen with every move. Moments like this make me acutely aware that I'm nothing more than a meat sack, that it's absurd for me to be fighting a war here in 0G. My vitals on the screen by my elbows agree, heart rate up, BP up, cortisol and adrenaline elevated. I crack my knuckles to try to flex my knees as best the rig allows. Then I thumb the switch for the Charlie comm channel by my left wrist. Anyone have action go live yet? Blank screens here, Casper's voice crackles into my earpiece. Smooth stars, Ford says. His voice distorts a bit too, but it was gravelly to begin with, so it's less apparent. Think they're gonna show? I ask, drumming my fingers on the armrest above the comm panel. Let me check their calendar, Casper says. Static crackles at the end of her transmission, and I wonder if that's just signal noise or an enemy attempting to breach the system. Maybe it's a rain delay, Ford says. Like you've seen rain, I say. I'm from Arizona, not hell. Tomato, tomato. Little static hisses. My hands convulse on the armrests. Comms interference is the norm leading up to an attack, but then it could just be regular static. Be original, dipshit, Ford says. What do you think they'll serve up in the mess once we've kicked back this incursion? I listen hard for more static. Anytime we think we've identified a predictor, the enemy changes their tactics. One time, they fluctuate the gamma radiation against the shield, another we're hit by radio bursts. It used to be only one combat pod engaged in a shift, but then the double attacks started. One thing that was clear was the enemy was getting more adept at reaching our space, while we weren't getting any better at repelling them. Shrimp Creole, blackened sausage, baby, Casper kicks back. She's ever the consummate coastal Cajun, even though she's accentless like all former military boarding school brats. You ain't never eaten real shrimp, I say. Doubt there's one left in the whole damn ocean. Rightio, Marcus, Casper replies, but it's in my genes. A girl can dream, can't she? Not in this fucking place. It's crawled up your ass. I know I'm being rude. I know it's just pre-encounter nerves. 0G plays the devil on your guts when anxiety gets your bowels rocking. You never think how important gravity is in helping your intestines do their job until you're on the float. But the thing is, we never know on any given day if an attack will occur or which combatants will bear the brunt. We all know it's a nerve blender. Sorry, I say. Then I lick my lips and lighten my tone. I'd be happy with some mac and cheese, not freeze-dried shit though. Real cheese poured over noodles. Real only comes in quotes up here, babe, Casper says. We all hate it when she calls us babe and baby, but if we say something, she'll just tell us we all whine like them. Cut the chatter, Clemson interrupts from what we call the God chair. None of us have ever seen inside his workspace. I assume it's a pod roughly like mine, but bigger. For all I know, Clemson could be sitting at the bottom of an hourglass or dressed in a bathrobe on a Shea lounge. He's the shift technical supervisor, running vitals and checking psych scans. They claim he focuses on the numbers, lines, and bars, but I hate that he gets an unfiltered glimpse of the shit that runs through our minds. He probably knows more about what we're thinking and feeling than we do. Remember, you're not just Earth's last line of defense. We're the only line of defense, we finish. I can practically hear Clemson nod. Then he clears his throat. Sit tight. Got anomalous feedbacks building in the backup circuits. Could be nothing, but I'm going to need you to run up. Check before he... Static infects and overrides the rest of his instruction. I adjust my headband. It's damp with perspiration. I run a thumb across it, squeezing out a drop of sweat that drifts away. My vital screen goes dark. I check the comm channel, but it's been cut entirely now. System check won't even recognize it's there. Only the hardened feed to the God chair will be operational now, and I can't access that. I'm on my own. I try to fix my attention on the screens, the edge of the screens, the labels of the screens, the way the print on Mammon is slightly skewed to the right from a printer error, the way the corner of Gabriel is nicked, a dead spot on the Abaddon screen is blacker than black. Each flaw reminds me of how terrifying imperfection is in orbit, how nothing on the station is in perfect repair, how half our fail-safes are sever the problem from the mother structure, even if you're in it, how a single spark from a bad connection can end in vent the module. How every single one of my companions, myself included, has written goodbye letters to our loved ones because we know we're not coming back down the gravity well. My mother's note is spotted all over with my tears. The ones I crumpled into the recycling chute were even worse. I try not to think about this. I try not to think of anything that will give the enemy ammunition, and in doing so, I bring to mind everything that will give them ammunition. I try not to think of my companions crying themselves to sleep at night, muttering conversations they wished they'd had with their kids, whispering prayers to their mothers and fathers, masturbating to photos of spouses and exes. I try not to picture the glum faces that crawl out from our bunks, how sometimes we wake surprised we woke up still here, that this place is real at all. I try not to think of my mother's brown eyes, the surrounding lines that started in their corners, gradually weighing the sockets down, the sound of her voice singing lullabies, that the first message she sent me when I deployed here was just her singing lullabies, how I chided her for it the first time we talked, how often I listened to those songs during the first weeks on the float. I try not to think of my sister Mari's pale cheeks, her thin smile, how every part of her face bears a memory of childhood, the scar on her chin when she fell off the slide, the day she asked me to watch her pierce her ears so I could clean up the blood, the exhausted smile she wore the day I met her first child, the light on her cheeks and forehead when she taught me to change their diapers. Mom, sis, and the kids are all I want to see, and that makes them both the most dangerous weapons against me, the most likely pigeonholes to pull my thoughts. I try to focus my thoughts elsewhere. If a screen goes live, it means one way or another my shift will be done soon. A shift always ends after an engagement. It's like waiting to get a broken bone set. I hate how much time can hurt, so I bang my fist against the arm of the chair. It's a declaration of self, to create an event. Here is a thing that happened, the sound says, the ache in my fist says. The screens are black and it's hard to stare at them because my eyes want to focus on something. If I don't hold my own, then I'll go stage 3. They've not told me what that means, but it involves blowing my pod into space, because if they don't, I'll take the station down. Fight the things you can, not what you can't. Familiar panic scrapes at the back of my mind like a dental drill. Come on, come on, come on, I mutter. A white flash from around the border of Moloch's screen, and I pivot. Moloch the violent, Moloch the wrathful, a stage 1 attack. The screen bursts with images of my sister being tortured, needles being shoved into her eyes, iron spikes between her ribs jerked side to side. Her skin tears audibly. The sound is like wet Velcro, and something wobbly and squelchy spills out from the opening. Put it back inside, put it back inside, something chatters at the back of my mind. If I'd not seen iterations of her suffering already on that screen and had not been warned of these kinds of images, I'd have no way to distinguish nightmare from reality. Time to dissemble. I'd think of a tennis racket on a giant bowl of pudding, rust on an I-beam in a railroad trellis, a parking lot with a napkin and fast food bag blowing through it. The screen goes black. Mari is back on the screen, only this time she is young. Birthday balloons hang from the ceiling. There's sparkling rainbow confetti on the floor all around us. She lies on her back, and I am on her chest, strangling her. Even though she is on the screen, I feel her fight to break free as my hands crush her neck. I furrow my brow, trying to focus beyond the dissonance, but her skin breaks around my fingers like a warm, gelatinous sludge. The air of her pathetic gasps rattles across my skin as it presses against the outside of her trachea. It's like her head grew right out of my wrists. My hands are so deep. Her mouth pleads, stop and please, but bubbles form at the back of her mouth instead of words. Stage 1 on the screen, 2 in the mind, I whisper, the training mantra like a tether to reality. Every part of me burns with a growing hideous fury, a rage worse than anything I've ever felt outside this rig. I want Mari dead. I want to twist her head off and throw it across the room. I must remind myself that I know the real memory, that I know she's alive, though I see it on the screen, I know this is a corruption. In reality, we were only wrestling, both laughing. I didn't hurt her at all, but seeing it play out differently on screen is enough to warp my memory. I suddenly remember how glad I was when the life left her eyes. The attack is escalating. False memories, false memories. I clench my fists until my nails dig into my palms. Dissemble. Nonlinear thinking disrupts their contact. Kites, marbles, starfish. One on the screen, two in the mind. I flood my mind with the field of spinning figure eights made of gemstones and old Volkswagens. I turn the gems into birds, into cars, into cats, and imagine them chasing each other wildly. They are balloons, I think, drifting away in the wind, all red and purple and blue and shiny. The screen blanks again. I take a deep breath. My whole body feels wrong. Like I'm a freshly hollowed post hole, like those chocolate bunnies I had a couple times as a kid. They were made of real chocolate once. Grandma used to buy them for me and my sister. Mari would eat her bunny right away, her mouth covered in dark smears like it was one massive hole. The world around me goes black as if I close my eyes. A chill invades me, first the air in my lungs, then my whole body convulses with the kind of cold that burns to the bone. When my vision ebbs back in, I'm on my side at a construction site, lying among broken cinder blocks in a torrential downpour. Stacked lumber and cubes of bricks stand up under the tarps, and sacks that simply look heavy are heaped behind wheelbarrows and shovels. It is night, and my breath bursts out ragged, my throat raw. In the distance, through a grid of naked girders, I see a blinking red light on top of a tower. I thrust my legs as if I can push myself up, but they scrape uselessly against slick mud that oozes into my shoes. This is not on the screens. I no longer perceive the gimbal rig, the equipment, or the pod. My entire body is freezing cold. A virulent sewage reek floods my nostrils, and a sharp snarl surges into my ears like a revving chainsaw. A hulking beast, crouched like a compressed spring, slinks into view. Its head lowers between trembling shoulders, and a bit of light from a source I can't see falls on its flank, and it looks like it was shredded open with claws. Amid the ruined muscle, yellow, white bone practically glows. The beast's whole body seems to ripple as it lowers, belly to mud, pink foam dripping from its swollen jowls. I want to call for Mari. She's supposed to be here. She's supposed to save me. In the real memory, she does. But in this memory, she's chosen not to. My mouth opens. I might say the word no, but thunder peals render me deaf. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, for that electric reading. I don't see anyone sleeping in the last end here, which was the plan. So thank you, everyone, for coming out. Andrew and Karen are going to be over there at the UTC book table to sign any books you buy. And Andrea will be over here if you buy any books, if you want to sign or just chat with any of the writers that came out tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the Meacham events tomorrow at 12 noon at Lupton, first floor, and then at Stoveworks Friday night. And then, of course, we have some stuff Saturday as well. So thanks, everyone, for coming out.
I was gonna try to bring alive all day. I was here too many years ago when we were okay, wait there. Hold on, 94. Yeah. And my kid took alive all day.